you want to get the character into Unreal Engine, first you have to build everything and make sure that the create game skeleton is on. I just built it already. So I get here the game skeleton, and that is basically just a simplified copy of the rig. And you can use that to export to any game engine, not only Unreal Engine. And from here, there's an easy way to export it. You just go to the sidebar and then click Export FBX. And then when you click on the Explorer FBX, you can see what you just exported. And then I go to Unreal Engine 5.4, and I just drag that FBX into here. Okay, so in the import options, first I always click Reset to Default. Make sure that skeleton is set to none. Then under Advanced, make sure that Import Morph Target is on. And I always uncheck the physics asset because we don't need it in this case. And then import. And here I got the skeleton mesh, but it doesn't have a control rig yet. So for that, we have to go back to Maya. After you've built the whole rig, meaning all the buttons are green, you can go to the build puppet and copy this line here. Now this line you only have if you also have this file specified here, the Unreal Control Rig version 1. If you don't have it, then you can add it here, but it's better if you copy from a character that already has it by default. The characters that are set up with it are the base dog, the base horse, base human, and Thomas, which is a face rig. And on the skeleton mesh, you do right click, create control rig. Open that. Okay, and then in here at the bottom, you do right click and then paste and then enter. So now you can see it's building the control rig. Usually it takes less than a minute. On the dog, it takes a bit longer than a minute because it's got all the toes. Okay, now it's finished. I can just click compile, and now the rig is basically working. Now let's look at the nodes and functions a bit more in detail. It's important to note at this point that this is still beta version, sort of kept clean enough to be able to navigate through everything, but in some situations it's a bit messy, especially on some older functions or if your character gets very complex. Let's look at the leg function more in detail. So you got here the FK, and then you got the IK, and then you have the IK backwards and the FK backwards ones. And those are basically for the FK IK switch. So if I move that somewhere, and then I click the FK to IK button, then it basically just switches without changing the pose. And the details function is basically handling these controls here, and it's also handling the twist joints. These little joints here. Now what you see here is the muscle joints, and they work exactly the same as the ones in Maya. And they're pretty easy to set up. I will leave a more detailed video to that in the description below. Now in the node graph, you usually find the muscles at the very end, and the muscles. Now let's look at one more thing in the leg. So on top of muscles, you also have corrected poses, and you find them in the curve container. And if you search, for example, for up leg, you can see here they're being evaluated. And I will also leave a video in the description below how to set up the corrected poses in Maya. Now, one thing that is very complex on the dog is the toes. They have basically an IK setup, and you can also curl them. And they also have their own controls. And then you also have a spread pose. Now, this spread pose might go away in future and be replaced with proxy controls, but for now, this is still beta version. Now, the spread pose actually comes from the finger poses here, where you can set up other poses, like some bipeds, for example, have a fist pose also. And so whatever you set up here, it will go to Unreal. Now let's look at the spaces next. And for that, let's move the rig into the level because that's how animators look at it. And a lot of controls have these space underscore attributes. So you've got space T, cog T, placement, and the same for rotation. In some other ones it's combined, but for the neck we want to have them separate. So right now it's space T1, so that means it's following the base. So if you move around the chest control, it's basically following with it. If I want to have it locked, when I move the chest control, I can just move the space to the cog control, which is this green one here. And if I move the spine now, it stays locked. And you've got the same attributes in Maya. Here it's a space T and space R. Now the only difference is that in Maya, it's enum attributes, and in Unreal Engine, it's blend attributes. And the reason for that is that right now I have switching tools in Maya, but I don't have them yet in Unreal Engine. And these spaces can be changed easily, and it's the green attaches. Now in this case, it's the top T, top R. So you can change those. You can put them on like a finger or something, or you can also add more bases. And you can change the default value, or you can also combine them to have rotation and translation combined. But on the neck, animators usually want them to be separate. Now, one fancy feature to that is that you can also attach it to geometry. If you add a custom attacher, then attach deformers UI, like this button, select the deformers and save. Now, this will also go to Unreal Engine. And the reason why it can actually do that is because this is not actually riveting to the geometry. Instead, it's looking at the deformers and trying to recreate that with something similar to parent constraint nodes. Now, let's look at the control shapes. So these are also coming from Maya. It's basically trying to get the shape that is got in Maya with the curves and trying to create this shape transform here. Now, the only thing is the toe controls. They are missing in Maya because Maya animators don't usually want them. They want them on the IK control. So in order to shape them to here, you can show them on the master group and then turn show non-control curves to on. These ones are really just so you can sculpt them. So it goes to Unreal Engine. Now let's look at the horse next. The horse is very similar to the dog, got a bit more work on the neck. The leg IKs are a bit different. I've also added a blink. The blink is happening from two joints, one for the bottom, one for the top, and you can adjust them using the sibling transforms. It's quite an efficient way to set up simple eyelids. I will leave a link in the description below how to set that up more in detail. Now let's look at a more detailed face rig next. So this is the Thomas rig in the templates, and it's actually my own face. So it's got a lot of blend shape sliders. They are all following each other. They're basically driving blend shapes and combination blend shapes too. And they're also having tweaker controls. So the tweakers are basically following the main sliders. And then on top of it, you can also move around the tweakers. In Maya, they are second skin cluster, but in Unreal Engine, they're baked into blend shapes. Now there's also a lip seal, or called zipper, which at this point it's still quite experimental because it's creating a lot of blend shapes. In Maya, this is a secondary skin cluster, but in Unreal Engine, it's converted to blend shapes, same as the tweaker controls.